And no, how you guys been today? How are you guys to drop a message in your agenda that's like how you guys been today? How's your day been? Okay, alhamdulillah. That's amazing. Alhamdulillah. Hey, alright. You on Slack.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to today's event, which is a continuation of our series on the life of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. As we delve deeper into his journey, we now enter a significant phase of his adulthood. In this lecture, we will explore various aspects of his life, focusing particularly on marriage, relationships. Through the example set by Ibrahim alayhi salam, we will gain insights into how a husband and wife should be towards one another and uncover the secrets to a successful marriage. Ibrahim alayhi salam serves as a timeless model for building strong, harmonious family bonds rooted in faith and mutual respect. We will also take a critical look at some of the most destructive societal issues today, namely adultery, illicit relationships. By understanding the severe impact these behaviors have on individuals and communities, we can better appreciate the importance of the pure and sacred relationship exemplified by Ibrahim alayhi salam and his family. One of the most powerful and inspiring stories from the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam is when he was thrown into the fire by his oppressors. Despite facing immense oppression and the threat of death, his unwavering faith in Allah Azza wa Jal was his shield. This story not only highlights his steadfastness, but also serves as a profound lesson for us in the maintaining of faith in the face of adversity. Today's event marks the beginning of many more insightful and spiritually uplifting events to come, inshallah. We encourage you to stay engaged and continue learning with us. Additionally, we invite you to check out Zad Academy, where you can further your knowledge and understanding of our beautiful deen through a variety of courses and resources. We want to express our heartfelt gratitude to all the members for the oh my God, participation and dedication. Your involvement is what makes this event successful and beneficial for the entire community. May Allah Azza wa Jal bless our gathering, increase us in knowledge, strengthen our faith. Jazakum Allah khairan for your attention and presence. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'll be giving you the word, Zair.
Alaykum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Barakallah feek, my brother. That was amazing. And as that, as Ewan said, uh, if you're not in that academy right now, I want you guys to join that academy. We'll have multiple events starting tomorrow all the way until Sunday. And then after Sunday as well, we're gonna have multiple events. And inshallah, that is there's a topic for another day. Give me a second. And yes, give me a second, one sec. I need to do something. Okay. Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Once again, as my brother Ewan mentioned, today's episode is a very interesting and important episode, and it is a continuation of the series that we've been doing so far. So before we move on, it is important for us to understand what the series is about and why we're doing these episodes. Now, the series is not just going through the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam. We're going through the lives and we're going to be extracting every single lesson, every single wisdom of every single lesson that we can, inshallah, and we're going to embed it into our life. We're going to deconstruct every single event in the life of Father Ibrahim alayhi salam, and we're going to divide it into multiple sections. And we're going to try to get as much as we can, much as knowledge as we can, psychologically, mentally, factually, historically, and spiritually, inshallah. And may Allah make it an amazing series that you guys can benefit, inshallah. So far, we went through Ibrahim alayhi salam's life. We explored his life when he was a small child. a pre-teenager from when he was just looking at the skies and the stars and pondering upon creation and trying to find his way to Allah Azza wa Jal, and all he knew was people around him, forcing their false ideologies on him. And then then we looked at Ibrahim alayhi salam standing up against oppression faced by his own family, from his own family, from his own father, from his own family. And then we looked at family abuse, we looked at all of these aspects, and alhamdulillah, the last episode we looked at something really important. And that is Ibrahim alayhi salam fighting against society. Ibrahim alayhi salam is referred to as a one-man nation, a one-man ummah. So all the characteristics that you find in one nation, you find it in Ibrahim alayhi salam. And that is the ability. And what it means to be a one-man nation is to be able to fight against the entire opposition, even if the opposition consists of everyone from the past, the present, and the future against you. And he did that. He faced that when he was a young child facing in society, when he was thrown into a fire. And that is where we left off. But now the story still continues. As everyone knows, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was thrown into the fire, and it was meant to be a fire that will burn him, a fire that will stop the message of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And it was a fire so big and so grand that historians write down in their books, and they say that it is a fire that was so big that it seemed like it was buildings on top of each other. And historians say that you could look at the fire, you could see the fire, you could spot the fire from half a kilometer away. And this was how big and grave the issue and the situation was at that time. And as you guys know the story, when it was what it was meant to be was a source of destruction for Ibrahim alayhi salam, but rather it became a sanctuary of peace and coolness for this amazing human being, this amazing person that we take our monotheism from. And then he walked out. He shocked the entire crowd. He shocked the people who wanted him dead. He shocked the people who wanted him gone. Right? And the entire world at that time, the people, what I mean by world is the people around him, the people involved in the story. Right? So the entire people disbelieved in him, and they were shocked. They saw the signs, they saw that this was no ordinary man, this was no ordinary situation. However, they still disbelieved. They called him a sorcerer, a magician, right? And they even called him a person who brings in destruction. And people knew that he had to be gone. However, what happened is something interesting. So this is actually a sign upon a sign, right? The sign of one man fighting, being really firm upon something and fighting against society. That is one sign, and the other sign is a man who was supposed to be burnt, walking out unaffected. And only the believers, only the people whose heart has been open to Allah Azza wa Jall's guidance can recognize such signs. And among the disbelievers, among the people who truly disbelieved, there were two people. There were two people who believed. There were disbelievers that only two people believed. The message that Ibrahim alayhi salam was about to bring reached the hearts of two people. And these two people are some of the greatest people in history. And these people are role models. And it was first and foremost, it was Lut alayhi salam, the Prophet Lot, who was later sent to the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. And his story we will clearly explore bit by bit, deconstructing it in a future event series bi'idhnillah. But leaving Lut alayhi salam aside, the story today focuses on two specific people. Ibrahim alayhi salam and his soon-to-be wife, Sarah alayhi salam. But before we go on to the story, there is something that we used to do that we always do in these lectures, in these episodes, in this series at least. Before we go on to understanding the story, we try to understand the society at that time. We try to understand what we're talking about. Like, okay, we're talking about marriage today, we're talking about all of this stuff, but why marriage? Why is this important? Why this stuff in the first place? Are we going to understand the reason for marriage, the reason for this? And in order to understand that, we must also understand, I mean, it must be clear right now from the sessions that we had, because throughout the episodes that we had, there is something that we learned. We learned that it is really common, and it was a common knowledge that society back then, more than 1,000 years ago, the society in ancient Babylonia was very similar to today's society. The same characteristics, the same qualities, the same agendas, the same hierarchy, the same misguidance, and even the same tools to control the people, right? So people at the top of the pyramid, they used to control the people at the bottom of the pyramid, right? And the deviance and the methods to take people away from mainstream monotheism is very common to what we have today. Right? What we have today is just a new and improved version. The principles were the same. The ideologies were very similar. We only have methods that were evolved throughout time, right? And these principles are very important. And among these principles, we're going to explore two things in common, right? Two main tools that were used for the misguidance of the people, and two main sins. And one of these sins will lead to another, and will lead to the more fatal one, to the more dangerous one. And that is, my brothers and sisters in Islam, it is adultery and haram relationships. Yes, this is something that we need to address today. It is important to address this today due to all of these things that we see in society today. Have you ever been in a situation where you just walk out of your house, or you go somewhere, you go to college, you go to school, you go anywhere, or you even come to Discord, and you see that people are engaged in such disgusting acts? Yes, I have to call it disgusting. Have you seen it happen? Yes, definitely. At one point in time, you might have. And if you have not seen it, Alhamdulillah, you have been blessed with that opportunity. So it is important for you to listen to today's lesson, to listen to today's episode to understand the danger of this. But before we understand adultery, before we understand relationships, we must try to understand the feelings and the emotions behind it. Because to be honest, some people think that having emotions and having feelings towards another person, especially if they're from the opposite gender, it is something bad, that it is something haram, that it is something evil. And if you have attraction towards someone else from the opposite gender, it is something bad. In reality, my brothers and sisters in Islam, is that is not true. Because that is what makes us a human being. Because we human beings are created with emotions, yeah, and we have feelings. And these emotions and feelings can either make us or break us. And we have a choice. And it depends on how we choose to handle it. So it doesn't matter if you have attraction towards another person. It's normal to have such feelings and to be attracted to other people. It's normal to love. It's normal to care. It's normal to want someone for yourself. It's normal. That is what makes us human beings. But if you come and tell me that you don't feel something for anyone at all, if you come and tell me that you have no attraction to anyone at all, and you don't feel anything, then I would say that there is something wrong in you. I always say there's definitely something wrong in you, because that is not what we have, because it is innate. Now, these feelings that we have towards opposite gender, it is innate. However, we are addressing, or something that I need to uh, make clear is that we need to know that there are some people out there, who find it hard to have such feelings due to certain mental issues, genetic conditions, and psychological conditions. However, what you must know is that at the core, these people, they have such feelings, they have the feelings, but it takes time and effort for people to develop such feelings. It takes time and effort. What I'm talking about is that even though you struggle, you have such problems, when you come and tell them that don't feel attracted to the opposite gender, there's something wrong with you. Even if it is psychological or mental or genetic, and I'm not meaning this in a wrong or a degrading manner, but I'm telling you this in a harsh but truthful, I'm saying to you honestly. There is something wrong with you if you don't feel attraction towards the opposite gender, because that is not humane. Because it is innate to feel this way. Alright? So what matters the most is that we understood this, we established that we do have such feelings. The first step is to embrace, to understand. The second step, however, is to control. And I mentioned it can either make you or break you. And to understand this, we're going to understand a report, a narration by Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. He gives us the cure for such, haram relationships and adultery that we have today. And in his words, there is wisdom that we need to understand. However, that we need to acknowledge that not everyone can, feel this from the bottom of their hearts, and it takes some time and effort. But his words are very simple. So he says, whoever fears Allah does not vent his anger, and whoever is mindful of Allah does not do whatever he desires. Because at the end of the day, even if it is simple feelings that you guys have, even if it is simple emotions, it is normal. But what matters the most is, are you acting upon these stuff? So when you have such emotions and feelings, you also get the desires to act upon it. So you need to make a distinction between your emotions and feelings and your desires, because it is hard to do that. I'm going to admit it is hard to do that, because when you get clouded by emotion, and then the shaitan whispers some desires to you, it is hard to navigate, it is hard to understand, because you do not know what is right from wrong, from what is wrong from that. You don't know which one of them is a desire, or which one of them is the emotions or the feelings. But Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, he gave the greatest advice, I believe, when it comes to such, after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is based on the advice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well. The answer to this, the solution to this, is to be mindful of the Creator. Is to always be mindful of the Creator. And we will explore on how we can be mindful of the Creator in this episode, because we're going to look through this issue, we're looking through this situation through the lens, which is the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, the noble man. And there's something else that we need to establish first before we go on. Because adultery and haram relationships, why are we saying that it is bad? Because in Islam it is some of the hated sins, right? Because we have a narration from Abu Dawood, right? Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu reported that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when a man commits adultery, faith departs from him as if it were a cloud overhead. And when he stops what he is doing, faith returns to him. So your iman is dependent on such a sin, right? So you have the ability, right? It's really dangerous. Your iman can go away, and some people even say, some scholars, right, that it could lead to the point of kufr. How does it lead to the point of kufr? They don't mean it literally, but they mean it that it could lead to kufr through the principle of sadd ad-darai. If you guys know, it means like, if basically what it does is that it closes the doors for anything bad. For example, the scholars use this principle to say that any major sin, anything major, right, it can lead to kufr. So what you need to do is you need to lock the door away. You need to stop doing this sin. You need to stop doing the major sins, because it would eventually lead you to kufr. If you want to understand the wisdom, I can explain it to you in a simple statement. When you lose your iman, you're more prone to the shaitan, right? And when you're more prone to the shayateen, what it does is that they always to the shayateen, they want you to be misguided. They want to take you out of the fold of Islam. So when you lose Islam, when you lose your sense of morality, your sense of justice, your sense of value and everything, you are more prone to adopting the ideologies of other people. And what the shaitan does is he makes the ideologies of other people seem really attractive to you, really beautiful to you. So this way, you're opening the door to kufr, simply. So the best way that what we need to do is we need to close the door to kufr by staying away from all types of major sins, even minor sins, because minor sins lead you to major sins, right? And moving on, the next part about haram relationships, it ties up with adultery. And so basically it goes together, but haram relationship is a lesser evil version. Is a lesser evil version of adultery. And everybody knows the famous hadith by in I think is related is Sahih according to Al-Albani, where the Prophet says, "For a nail of iron to be driven in the head of one of you would be better for him than to touch a woman who is unlawful." So what is better than touching a woman? So it is better for you for a nail of iron, of hard iron, to be driven into your head, to be embedded into your head, to be impaled into your head. It is better for you than for you to touch a woman who is unlawful to you. And this is the severity of the problem that we're talking about. And I want you guys to understand this before I move on. And the next part, when we talk about wrong relationships, when we talk about adultery, it does not come overnight. It does not happen instantly. It does not happen at once. There's always a cause. There's always a gateway. There's always a doorway. There's always a pathway for it. And there are many pathways. There are many, many pathways, but we're going to talk about something really common. Something that has to be addressed. Something that you and I face every day. Something that you and I used to once face in this particular server a long time ago. Before, Alhamdulillah, we changed the server, we got the management, we changed the server, and that is the issue of free mixing. It is important for us to understand this principle, this cause. Free mixing can lead you to things that can actually destroy you. Free mixing can lead to the destruction of families, and we're going to explore it one by one, inshallah. That since we already established remixing, we're going to go into a deeper detail a bit later. But it is also important for us to understand other reasons that can lead to adultery, other reasons that can lead to such actions, these prohibited actions. One of the reasons is emotional vulnerability. This is really important that you need to understand. So when you are a person who is emotionally vulnerable, it could be due to past traumatic experiences. It could be due to, are you having attachment issues? It could be you to just, being kind of weak mentally and psychologically. If you have this issue, if you have this particular thing, people can really take advantage of you. And this is one reason that actually makes you want to go into such haram relationships. But because you are vulnerable. And when a person is vulnerable, what they want to do is that they want to rely on something. They want to rely on someone that can tell them that you're not vulnerable anymore, that you are a strong person. They need their validation. And emotional vulnerability often happens for many reasons. One of the reasons is that you go through something. It could be innate. It could be genetic. The other reason is that it could be, as I mentioned, it could be something due to your past traumatic experiences. So, for example, shunned by your family, shunned by your friends, you living a life of loneliness, you living a life of pain. So when you go through such things, you need companionship. You need someone to give you validation. What happens then is that you go orphan, right? And this is something really important, because if you do not give your child, your nephew, your friend, or your family member, or anyone the love and affection that they deserve, they will definitely go and seek validation, love, and affection in places that are dangerous. And when they go, you and I, we all know the stories of grooming, the stories of people taking advantage of each other, the issues of pedophilia. We all know these issues. It's very common today. So what is the cause? Because people feel emotionally vulnerable and they don't have any person to give them validation from their family. So they go out there and they seek it from an external source. And if they go to a bad source, an evil source, may Allah prohibit that may Allah protect us from any of that happening, and our future and our past and everything from this particular issue. You're going to be groomed, you're going to get affected, you're going to get abused. You know all of these stories. I don't need to explain this because it's going to take a long time. So this is one reason, the first reason I want to keep in mind. The second reason is social norms and peer pressure. I think we addressed this last episode. Peer pressure, when you are in a position and you believe something is wrong, but you're surrounded with people who keep telling you that this thing that you're doing wrong is actually correct. It's the issue of society when you're surrounded by people of bad faith, or people of who are upon misguidance, people upon disbelief, or if you're surrounded by the West itself, you're in the West, this will happen to you. Social pressure, when they're like, they feed you information and they force information onto you. They tell you, okay, this is correct because we believe so, we say so, this is correct, so that therefore this is correct. Another thing, another principle that I mentioned last episode is social conditioning. I think it's classical conditioning, my part. It's classical conditioning is where you force a belief, right? You keep telling something, you keep repeating something to someone until the person believes it to be true. And we saw that in the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, where people tried to tell him that what he is worshipping, Allah is he is worshipping the Creator is, and that he should worship the idols. They tried to force this belief into him. Alhamdulillah, we know how he recovered. Alhamdulillah. This number two, social pressure, peer pressure. You need to understand this. Number three is a lack of boundaries. It's very important, especially if you are a new Muslim, or if you're not a Muslim, or if you do not have knowledge. This thing happens when you are one of these three people, or you are a Muslim and you have knowledge but you don't care anymore, right? Or you are a new revert. The five categories. This happens. So what happens is that when you don't have when you don't have knowledge that tells you to stay away from certain things, you do not have any boundaries or guidelines in your life when it comes regarding interactions between different genders or individuals. When you're in certain places, certain, I could say, certain places in real life or in online communities or different servers, different places where they promote free mixing, where they promote such interactions between the male and the female unnecessarily. What happens is that you're more prone to get into it, right? Because you don't have any boundaries. Because a person who doesn't have any boundaries is more prone to being affected than a person who has boundaries. Well, needless to say, it's important to say that a person who has boundaries will also be affected if they do not do certain things that we're going to explain later, inshallah. The other point is when these 3 points are specifically related to marriage, related to relationships, right? So I want you guys to keep this in mind. Why am I telling you this? Because we are people who will one day reach adulthood, just like how Ibrahim alayhi salam reached adulthood. He transitioned from being a teenager to being an adult. And it is important that we talk about this. It is important that we understand this, because one day we will be the people who replace our parents in society today. And so, as young people or as old people, it is important for us to know and understand this, because if we don't, then we will be basically society without our knowing. We'll be basically destroying our next generation. So this particular thing is, when there is a conflict, a particular issue in your current relationship. Okay, a second, okay, please. One second. Just give me a second. Ewan, can you keep me under the WC for a sec? Because my PC just went blank. Give me a second. Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You guys hear me now? You guys can hear me, just react to my message that I put inside you right now. Okay, just react to that message. If you guys can hear me. Okay, perfect. Apologize for that sudden, technical issues. Expected. Okay, anyways, moving on. Okay, as I was saying, this issue is related to marriage, and it is about conflicts within your relationship that you already have, right? So this particular issue is really common, and this is a reason for the destruction of many families, the destruction of many societies, and destruction of many children that we have today. Is when you marry someone that is not fit for you. We are going to be talking about the criteria for marriage through the lens of Ibrahim alayhi salam. This is the most important lens that we need to talk about so far. right? And what happens is that when you have an issue, when you have a conflict, and you do not have effective communication in your relationship, if you do not have, you know, good connections, if you do not have the ability to change and adapt, if you guys do not have the ability to understand, to respectfully disagree, and various other reasons and other concepts that we are going to understand, if you do not have these qualities, then you are more prone to being affected by uh, any conflicts that may arise in your marriage. And you guys know the shaitan very well. Whatever he tries to do is that he tries to cause separation between a man and his woman. Right? So if you guys don't have these abilities, then you will definitely be prone to such, I would say, consequences. And this is a serious consequence that you need to understand. The other thing is it is a lack of emotional connection or lack of communication or lack of like, connection with your spouse. This happens when like you're not happy in your relationship. And this happens when you do not have your relationship is not based on the foundation that is to believe in Allah Azza wa Jal. When it is not based on the same goals that you guys have. If you guys get into a relationship or a marriage with a spouse who does not like you or you do not like, is just forced, or it is something that nothing is going well, nothing is going properly, and there's always chaos and anger and all of this stuff, and there is no means of communicating properly, there is no means of understanding, there's no means of respectfully disagreeing, and no means of trying to make amends. What happens then is that you feel a loss of connection with your spouse. What happens then is when you feel loss of connection with your spouse, you tend to do the things that would break your family. And we see men and women do things, they try to seek validation outside of marriage through free mixing, through adultery, through other things. So if you do not give, I want you guys to note this down, very important. If you do not give your spouse that connection, or if you do not maintain a connection in your marriage, in your relationship, and it could not be marriage only, it could be anything else, like a relationship with your son, relationship with your daughter, relationship with your mother, a relationship with someone close to you. If there is no connection, there are more things that might more negative consequences that might happen. And this is especially talking about marriage, it would lead to adultery, and you guys know well how it would lead. The steps it will take. It's like how a domino falls. You just start the domino falling, and then it starts falling. Right? It's just one trigger is enough for the entire relationship to break. The next one is related to marriage, however, it is related to people as well. And this, I think, we noticed that this is really common in Discord. I'm not talking about this server. I'm not talking about the Islamic community. I'm talking about the other communities that we have. It is really common. And this is the urge, the need to seek validation and to seek attention. If you have this desire to seek attention and validation, you do not have the ability to sit down to be committed to a certain relationship. So this is a sign that you're not ready for marriage, that you're not ready for a relationship. If you're always trying to seek validation from different sources, and there are different words that are being used to describe such people, and I'm not going to take much of your time because we have much to talk about. So these things I want you guys to note it down as reasons or causes or things that could lead to adultery. And the most important thing that we're going to discuss on throughout this topic, among these topics, is free mixing. Now, before we move on, and I want you to take a step back. I want you guys to take a pause. Just put everything down. Just stop doing everything, and I want you to close your eyes. It's a small activity that I want you guys to do. Sit down, stop everything that you're doing, close your eyes, and I want you to imagine this. Imagine this. So imagine you're in this position, you as a young Muslim, or a young Muslim, because the age range here is young. If you're old, you could imagine that as well. Imagine yourself as a young person, as a young Muslim or a young Muslim, and you're navigating through different stages. You could go, maybe you're going through college, maybe you're going through something in real life, maybe you're going through some sort of environment, and amid social gatherings, amid different instances, amid different maybe it could be lectures and different stuff, you meet a person from the opposite gender. But just imagine this. I just want you to imagine this, and I'm not having any filters. I want you to imagine this to understand the consequences of it mixing. And then what happens is, if you're not comfortable imagining it as yourself, you can imagine it as a first person or second person, third person. It doesn't really matter. Just imagine a person. Let's take a person, or let's take a person called okay. Let's think of a name. Let's take a person called yeah, I'm gonna let's take a person called Abu Bakr. Right? Let's take a person called Abu Bakr. So Abu Bakr, what he does is that he is a person who is firm on his deen. He loves Allah Azza wa Jalla so much. He is really good. However, he navigates through certain issues, certain situations in his life. It could be college, it could be another social gathering, it could be online, it could be Discord, it could be WhatsApp, it could be anything. And somehow Abu Bakr, he stumbles upon a certain person, a certain character, and let's call this character X, right? Let's just call this character X. But the thing is, you can okay, let's call this character X. And Abu Bakr, he like feels a sort of connection, and let's say the connection comes from a certain emotion. And this, as as guys know, that we already established the emotion and feeling part. We also established the desire part, and it is important for us to distinguish between the desire, and it is also important for us to distinguish between desires and the emotions, because it is hard for us to distinguish between these two. So now, this Abu Bakr, he has such feelings towards this particular person, right? And through different instances, through different conversations, through different issues, these feelings slowly starts to evolve into something much more deeper. It starts to become a heavy hammer that is banging on you. And what starts small is slowly leading into something big with every passing moment. Whenever you're engaging in this with this person, whether it be just talking to them, whether it be their words, whether it be thinking about that person, whether it be, you're being drawn to that person, the understanding, the effortless way of how that person makes you feel, basically. And the more time you spend, is really important. The more time you spend, the more time Abu Bakr spends with this person, or thinking about this person, or talking about this person, this particular emotion or feeling of admiration, of admiring, this admiration morphs into something that we call yearning. Yearning is basically where you like really need something, or really want something, right? And it goes into a yearning. You yearn for this person. You yearn for a desires of that is put forth by the shaitan. When it is tied with what society tells you, when it is tied with what people tell you, especially if you are a person in the West, what happens then is that this yearning, it turns into a struggle to impress. And when you try this stage is where you try to impress this person so bad, you try to please this person, you try to get this person to acknowledge you, you try to get validation from this person. And this stage is normal. Everybody goes through this stage. However, there comes a different stage right after. What is the stage? This stage is where it's not with desires by the shaitan. It is where you try to be obsessive. Right? You try to force yourself into the life of this person, right? And then you try to uh, basically influence a person. We see this different. I'm not gonna different areas. I'm not gonna go much because it's kind of a sketchy. It's kind of a scary topic if you really understand that point. And when it becomes obsessive, when it becomes dangerous, when it becomes scary, what happens then is that the person involved, the innocent little child, the innocent little woman, the innocent little girl, that she is involved, yeah, or the man whatever you can call it, the man or the woman, you are putting this person's life in danger without you realizing it. That is number one. And number two, you're slowly starting to lose yourself. You're losing your sanity. You're losing what makes you you. You're losing your originality. Why did this happen in the first place? Because you spend more time thinking about it. And there is a solution from the Sunnah that stops this, cycle midway, and that is marriage. Simply put, that is marriage. So if you struggle with the desires, what the Prophet ﷺ says is that you need to get married. If you have the means to get married, and if you're unable to control your desires, start fasting, right? And let's understand something else. Let's understand that marriage is not in the equation. Let's just see if this goes on and possibly the act happens, the act of adultery happens. It goes into haram relationship and the act of adultery happens, especially considering that the two people involved are Muslims. What happens next is something dangerous that we need to be clearly aware of. Because the thing that people do right now, it is just a temporary enjoyment. They do that for something temporary, just an enjoyment, just a fleeting moment in their life. So what happens later is guilt overcomes you. There's not only guilt, there are different mixed feelings and different things that overcomes you. And when you're in this particular thing, and Islam is not given to you, and you do not have your faith, and you do not make your effort to bring back your faith, what happens is you tend to lead a nihilistic life, because you start to lose all meaning, because since it starts to corrupt you from your mind. It starts to corrupt you, your mind, your heart, your soul. And you and I know everything and how it affects people, right? So when it starts to corrupt your mind, your heart, and your soul, slowly goes on and on and on, and sooner or later, it leads to the person making decisions that it does not befit a Muslim to make, right? It leads into, you know, taking out the anger on other people that destroys the life of other people. It leads to engaging in more haram, leading you to be more deviated from what you were in. And last but not least, it leads you to ending your life. And that is how serious this issue is. It starts off by free mixing, a simple glare, a simple glance, a simple text, and this is what it leads to. So next time you guys have such desires or feelings, emotions, I want you to remember this. Are you going to risk your life for something like this? It could happen because Iman is not guaranteed. You could have the highest faith right now, but it is not guaranteed that you will die as a Muslim. There are people that we know who are so firm upon their deen, they started to leave Islam just because they felt like they didn't feel the connection anymore. We know many sisters who are really firm upon their deen, really firm upon their religion, and in a matter of days, in a matter of seconds, they had to remove the hijab and they embraced the religion of the disbelievers. Matter of seconds. So it is not destined. It is not. You do not know if you're going to die as a believer or a disbeliever. So you need to understand this. So you need to not risk anything. So do not risk anything. That is something I want you to understand. Because the consequences are mad. The consequences are so scary, and the internal struggle it reaches to an extent you guys know what I mean. Because I can't explain this even more. Like I could explain it, but I don't want to take much time because we're gonna move on to the next point. Now that we understood the issue, the problem, the causes, the consequences, and everything, the solution that Allah Azza wa Jal- that the Prophet ﷺ says is marriage, the institution of marriage. A person who cannot control their desires, who has a desire or urge, if they have the means to do it, then they must get married. If they cannot, then they must fast because it is a means of controlling desires. And this is something that you guys need to have in mind. Before we move on and explore this story, this aspect through the lives of the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, and his life of marriage, you guys understand that marriage is not something simple that we're talking about. Marriage is promoted in society now as something amazing. It is something beautiful, something grand, which it is. It is. However, people go in blindly. When they start to get married, they go in blindly without realizing and understanding that with marriage it comes certain tasks, certain responsibilities, certain struggles that if you do not know how to tackle, it will lead you to destroy not only yourself, but the life of your spouse and the life of your children and the life of those who look up to you and the lives of your parents who invested time and money in you. So if you do not have the ability to do this, you're just going to destroy lives basically. But something to understand is that in this session we're not going to go into the deep fiqh of marriage. If you guys want to cover the fiqh of marriage, you guys can just create a ticket and ping me or Abdul. But we're going to cover the psychological and mental aspects. Okay, through the lives of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. So that's what I want you to understand. Marriage is something beautiful psychologically and Islamically. It is something amazing. It is a journey, and it is a journey where two souls they come together. It is a journey of happiness and peace, but also a journey of understanding and development. Because through marriage, you develop, you unlock versions of yourself, things about yourself that you never unlocked before. You start to forge bonds and start to deepen experiences. You start to understand things about people that you never even thought of. Marriage can either make or break a person, depending on how you approach it, depending on what you learn about it. So this is something I need to understand. And marriage is really recommended. It is a heavily emphasized sunnah that we must try our best to do. Right? And if you guys want to know more about this, if you want to know more about the fiqh of marriage or the psychology of marriage, what I want you guys to do, right, just give me a second, is I want you to go to the official server website, alfirdosofficial.com. So we have two books that is dedicated to marriage. If you guys have the means to do it, I want you guys to purchase the book and read about it. Because the reason we uploaded these books is because we created these books is because we have different audiences. We have different organizations. We are an organization. We have different audiences, and we have an audience that is specifically tied into marriage and this type of thing. So if you want to be part of that community, you can go purchase a book, and there's a few procedure, and then inshallah we can get you that community, etc., etc. Anyways, moving on. The other part that you need to understand, just give me a second. So main key point from this point is that marriage is a journey. It is happiness, it is peace, yet also there is struggle that if you do not know how to take care of, it could lead to many destructions. But now, these things aside, these points and concepts aside, let's take a break from this. I talked about this for too much. You guys listened for this for almost an hour. Let's leave this aside. And let's go back to the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. The story of Abraham, and I think we left off when Ibrahim alayhi salam was, he came out of the fire, and there were two people who believed in him, right? And it was his nephew Prophet Lut alayhi salam and his wife Sarah alayhi salam. And in the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam, we once again see when he reached adulthood, when he went through this journey, like just like us from teenagehood, they went into adulthood. When he went to adulthood and he went into the family life, in his family life, we see a clear manifestation of how a noble husband and a noble wife treats one another. And how we also see how Allah Azza wa Jalla created husband be tranquility and peace to one another. Because in the relationship that we see between Sarah alayhi salam and Ibrahim alayhi salam, we see trust and we see transparency between them. And we see, a good communication between them. We see good, talking. Like if there's an issue, they talk it out. And most importantly, we see something that is clearly important, and that is the first thing that you need to consider when you're considering to marry someone. And that is that when you're trying to marry someone, you must understand that the first thing that they have, that you guys must have, is a foundation. And the foundation is the foundation of trust in Allah. Because if this is not established, if the foundation of trust in Allah Azza wa Jalla is not established in your marriage or in your relationship, then your relationship and your marriage is bound to fail. It is bound to become an eternal prison instead of an eternal journey of growth. And you must also consider that you two must have the same goals in life. like, which is to first and foremost praise Allah Azza wa Jal, to please Allah Azza wa Jal. Because if this thing, it is void of this thing, if your relationship and your mind and your heart is void of this thing, then you guys are not ready for marriage. And how many people have we seen the marriage being destroyed because they lack these two qualities? People getting married, innocent women being abused by their husbands because they lack these two. So it is important to understand this. So going back to Ibrahim alayhi salam, and as we always call him, a one-man nation. All the characteristics you find in one ummah, you find in Ibrahim alayhi salam. So when they were migrating, so when Ibrahim alayhi salam came out of the fire and they believed in him, and when he received the command from Allah Azza wa Jal to migrate to a different land to spread da'wah, because the message of Allah Azza wa Jal, it always has to continue. It cannot be restricted. It cannot be taken away just because a person feels an oppressive power, faces an oppressive power. So they had to migrate. And when Ibrahim alayhi salam, his nephew and his wife were migrating, on the way, Lut alayhi salam received a revelation, and he was summoned to the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. And then we're left with Sarah alayhi salam and Ibrahim alayhi salam. And as time goes on, and when they were migrating, they passed by a nation. They passed by the kingdom of the pharaohs. They passed by the land to which a messenger of honor, a messenger of nobility and resilience will be sent to, inshallah, very soon after this particular incident. And we all know that when the messenger is sent down, tyranny reached its peak. Tyranny was at its peak. And then we all know the stories, alhamdulillah, how the people were guided. So back to the story, when they were passing by, they were passing by, this kingdom of Egypt. There was a certain place, right? And this place or this kingdom, it belonged to a tyrant and an oppressive ruler. And as they were passing by, they were spotted by a group of people. And this group of people belonged to this kingdom. So when they recognized these Ibrahim alayhi salam and Sarah alayhi salam, they immediately sent a message to the king. So you must understand why this happened in the first place. Because Sarah alayhi salam, as historians say, as the fuqaha say, and as the commentators say, that she was a woman of beauty. She was the most beautiful and honorable woman at that time. So once they saw this woman, once they saw Sarah alayhi salam, they immediately sent a message to the king, right? And okay, O king, O tyrant, O ruler, we saw a woman so beautiful, so grand, and so magnificent, and she was accompanied by a man, and we want to bring her to you. So what is your command? And the tyrant replied, go and ask the man, go and ask the woman, and if the person she's traveling with, ask her if he is her husband or if he is her brother. If she says that he is her husband, I want you to kill the person. I want you to bring that woman to me. If he is brother, then spare him. So before the people came to Ibrahim alayhi salam, Allah Azza wa Jalla sent the angel Gabriel, Jibreel alayhi salam, to Ibrahim alayhi salam, and he informed Ibrahim alayhi salam of this movement. So Ibrahim alayhi salam said to Sarah alayhi salam, it is a very beautiful thing, and there's often some misconceptions in this particular issue. So Ibrahim alayhi salam told Sarah alayhi salam, when they come and ask you, I want you to tell them that I am your brother in Islam. Because there are some Christians, some non-Muslims who use this argument that a prophet lied, that a prophet, a messenger so grand and so amazing lied. Right? So this issue is not the case. Because if you think deeply about it, there are multiple reasons. Number one, when you talk about brothers or sisters, when talking about brothers, there are multiple different types. Number one, biological, right? And we're just going to go through the most important. We're going to go through the biological ones, metaphorical ones, and the last but not least, we're going to go through the ones by brothers mean brothers in faith. And that is what he meant. And the second and other reasoning is that He had to, because he was the only people, because Sarah alayhi salam and Ibrahim alayhi salam were the only believers at the time. So Allah Azza wa Jalla's religion had to continue, it had to go on. And it was decreed that he will not die at this moment, that he will not give in, and that the story will continue, right? And so, due to this reason, this is an easy refutation for anyone who comes and tells you that Ibrahim alayhi salam was a liar and that therefore Islam is wrong, right? So, the story goes that when Sarah alayhi salam told this to the people who came, there was a painful separation between a husband and a wife. A painful separation between Ibrahim alayhi salam and his wife Sarah alayhi salam, because she was the only person, one of the only people who believed in him. Just imagine you walk out of the fire. I want you guys to imagine your position of Ibrahim alayhi salam. You walk out of the fire, you're being thrown in, you face physical abuse, you face mental, every world, the world shuns you and the world breaks you down, and the only person to believe in you is being taken away from you, is being separated from you, especially when that person is someone that you love. The pain that a man feels or a woman feels particular issue, this situation cannot be described in words. The emotions is the feelings is so scary and dangerous and intimidating. And if a normal person were to feel these emotions, that either it would definitely break that. If a person from this century whose iman is not great, whose iman is not to a certain level, if that person were to go through such a situation, the person would definitely feel depressed, definitely broken, and it would lead that person to do things that are unthinkable. That is how society operates today. That is how human beings are weak today. But understanding this painful separation, it is important. Just give me a second. I'll drink some water. You only can continue for a while, yeah? Let's go drink some water. If there's any questions about this part so far, just let me know inside chat. Just ping me in your chats about the issues about what I mentioned, about the concepts. But the next one break. Anyway, assalamu alaikum. Do you guys have any questions? Or do you guys have any questions, guys? That's kind of take me inside chat. Because the points that I mentioned, those are important points that I want you guys to understand. If you guys understand how you guys can feel free to ask me. Because there's a few things that we have to explore a bit later, inshallah. So if you got, just let me know if you guys have any questions, yeah? Inside chat. Just ping me, just do anything. I'm gonna give you guys 1 minute, inshallah. Alaikum salam. Yep, okay. Yes. I assume you guys don't have any questions. So you say any pings? Okay, anyway, let's continue. Okay. We stopped at the painful separation between Sarah alayhi salam and Ibrahim alayhi salam. And after understanding the painful separation and moving on, now Ibrahim alayhi salam was left alone once again. He was broken once again and he was left alone. And now Sarah alayhi salam is going on a journey. a journey on which she will be really tested. Her strength, her belief in Allah, her conviction, and above all, her loyalty to Allah Azza wa Jal and to Ibrahim alayhi salam will be tested. And something else you must understand is that Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was a person who was not obsessive over his spouse. He was a person who left the trust in Allah Azza wa Jal. He trusted Allah Azza wa Jal and he let his spouse do the thing which Allah commanded her to do, which was commanded for that particular thing to happen. He was not obsessive. He was not. It was not a helicopter type of relationship. It was not an obsessive relationship or anything bad, or anything dangerous. So he was able to let go. He was able to trust in Allah, and he was able to see what happens next. And this is something I want you guys to understand as well, because it is important to not be obsessive over your spouse or any other person in general, because being obsessed leads you to things that could control and destroy a person. And as we move on, we go on the tale where Sarah alayhi salam was summoned in front of the king, the tyrant. And the tyrant, he was a womanizer. He loved women. He loved to have women around. And when the tyrant was, when Sarah alayhi salam was summoned before the tyrant, so Sarah alayhi salam, she had faith in her Lord. She had an utmost tawakkul. And she did not fear anything what was about to happen next. And at that moment, she made a dua. So when the tyrant was about to approach her, when the tyrant was about to do the unthinkable, or things that lead to the unthinkable, Sarah alayhi salam made a supplication. He said, "Oh my Creator, if I haven't guarded my chest, if I have guarded my chastity, if I had remained firm in your path, if I had believed with conviction, and if I remain loyal to my husband, then protect me from this evil tyrant." And the moment she made the dua, the tyrant became paralyzed. And then, with the request of the tyrant, she made a dua for the tyrant to be released. The tyrant, always being this stupid person in the story who does not seem to learn from what's happening, tried to do it again and tried to do it again and again and again. And each time she made the dua, and the tyrant got paralyzed to an extent where he could not even move it. And he started screaming at the soldiers, "What kind of woman have you brought me? The woman that you brought me is a witch. She's a sorcerer. She is a magician. Why have you brought me such a person?" Right? And the reason is that that was according to him. But in reality, we understand this was due to many reasons. Number one, tawakkul. And number two, being loyal. Because at this moment, her loyalty was truly tested. Because if you put a man or a woman in such a situation, the person's loyalty is really going to be tested, right? And I'm not going to expand more because we don't have much time. Anyways, so after the issue was over, after the situation was over, when Sarah alayhi salam returned to Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam asked his wife, "What happened? Yeah, what happened? What happened?" And then Sarah alayhi salam said, "Allah Azza wa Jal took care of me." And Ibrahim alayhi salam did not ask anything further. And that was the end of that chapter. You may think that this is something simple, but in reality, this has something more beautiful and grand that you and I face here. Because something, as I mentioned, it is important for a person to not be obsessive when you're in a relationship with your spouse. It is important to give that person some time. It is important to give that person some space. And it is important for not like throwing yourself against this person 24/7. Ibrahim alayhi salam asked the question. She replied, and he knew that Allah Azza wa Jal took care of her, and therefore he did not force her anymore. He did not push her anymore. And then the chapter was done. The chapter was over, and this shows trust and transparency between the two spouses. And this is something that is important, a quality that every single person must have and must possess for a successful marriage, for a successful relationship, and to be noble men and women. Because without these qualities, it is truly going to be a devastating thing, a devastating moment. Now, through this story of what happened, there's something that we need to understand. As we mentioned early in this episode, that there are some criteria that we need to keep in mind when we're going to choose a particular spouse. Criteria according to the Sunnah and criteria according to the Seerah of Ibrahim alayhi salam. The first and foremost and the most important criteria is the foundation. The foundation has to be based on the belief in Allah Azza wa Jal, the creator of the heavens and the earth. If your relationship is void of this foundation, your life, your marriage is definitely is going to become corrupt. Number two, you guys must have similar goals or very same goals. And the most important goal is to please Allah Azza wa Jal. If you guys don't have the same goals or similar goals, then your marriage is not going to get anywhere. The relationship is not going to go anywhere. And we have seen this happen. We've talked to people in the marriage field who's going through these situations. I told you guys that we have a different community targeted at a different age group about marriage in different platform that we use, that we help people with. So many people who come to us, they tell this issue that without goals, without similar or same goals, the marriage will is really going to be corrupt. It could lead into uncertainties and fights and issues and chaos, and that will eventually lead to divorce. That will eventually lead to families being destroyed. These are not just things I'm telling you. These are things that we heard from real people. That these are things that are real that people are going through. So it is important to keep the second point in mind as well. The third point in mind is adaptability and compatibility between two people. If you're not compatible, the relationship is not going to work. If there's no chemistry between you two, if there is no, if you guys are not compatible, basically, if you guys are unable to understand one another, if you guys are unable to talk to one another, if there's no communication and things like this, it is hard for a marriage to last. So there's one thing you need to understand. The other thing is planning for the future. So when it comes to marriage, when you meet a person that you're going to get married, it is important for you guys to learn and discuss your future plans. Because if the future plans contradict and there's going to be issues, when you guys don't discuss future plans, and there's going to be uncertainties. So when you get married, basically, you're going to either be in an eternal hell or in eternal growth, right? An eternal garden, I would say. So if you guys do not discuss your plans or come up with something certain and similar and that is good for your future, you're basically going to live in an prison. And that is dangerous, that is scary, that is bad, right? That is something you need to understand as well. And the other thing is preferences. And preferences, we're leaving it up to the man and the woman. The man and the woman has their own preferences, and preferences are actually allowed. Because as I mentioned, the concept of eternal hell, eternal prison, or eternal gardens. And if you guys don't like the preferences, etc., it could be beauty, it could be appearance, it could be so many things. If the preferences are all right, you guys are going to live in eternal prison. Well, because marriage is supposed to be something grand, something beautiful, something happy. It is something like when you're returning to your home. It's something that's going to be the coolness to your eyes. Yeah. So if it is something that you do not like or you do not prefer, it's going to be hard for you to live your life in this certain issue or situation. So therefore, it is important to take note of preferences as well. And then lifestyle and mentality, similar thing that connects to uh, compatibility. And you guys know what I mean by compatibility as well. And definitely good communication. Because without communication, it is hard or it is almost impossible for a marriage to last long. Because, for example, let's take an issue, a situation where there is something happens, right? And the man is suspicious of the woman. The woman did nothing wrong, but the man is suspicious of the woman because of something, just a whisper of the shaitan, right? And If there's no communication to talk to each other and settle this out and to understand what's going wrong, to make amends and change and become better people, then the marriage is destined to doom. Yeah, it's destined to fail. That is important that you need to understand this. So basically, we're going to cover clear communication in various different steps after this, inshallah. So just keep in mind for that as well. And practical challenges. But what I mean by practical challenges is that you're definitely going to face challenges if you guys do not come up with strategies and practical methods to battle these challenges, to tackle these issues, to tackle these situations, and to do all of these things. It will definitely have an effect on your family. And it could affect your spouse and you as well, but it definitely affect your children. Because if you guys don't have methods to practically handle issues and situations, and there's a lack of communication, and the only thing that the man uses is abuse, and he beats up her wife, and the young children, they look at the man beating up her wife, and they learn from the man, and they start to beat up her own mother. And the children be after the children beats up their own mother, they try to imitate the action into other people, try to imitate the action into people that are unlawful to them, and then they try to imitate the action into their own children, their own spouses, etc., causing a generational curse. So that is what I mean by practical challenges. And moving on, we move on to something interesting. It is a very interesting concept. Before we move on, I want to. Is there any questions you guys have? Like anything that I need to clear up? Or you guys misunderstood or anything like that? Because the next step is the third part of this particular session. And I want you guys to understand the first two parts because those are prerequisites for the third one. So just let me know, inshallah, if you understood. Just can ping me in either of your chats. Just, inshallah, get back to you guys. Can you explain what you mean by resume? What do you mean by resume? Okay, if you want, you can like open a questions. You can just ping me later. Inshallah, just send you like the stuff. I'll send it to you in detail. Just open a question. You can just ping me. Inshallah. Okay, it's perfect. Yes, the event is being recorded. Hope so, inshallah. Is there any other questions? Okay, I assume not. Okay, I'm waiting for you. Okay.